also has New York also has nonpartisan school board races, of which they've never gone ahead and do the kind of investigation that I'm talking about. And their other local races are partisan. So that's going to be a big deal in New York once they get started doing that research. Maine, we have Lynn Williams, who's been doing a fantastic job doing research, along with a couple other Greens in Maine supporting her. I work together with her, and she's going town by town. So here's what you do. You take your Green voter registration database, you have it in a spreadsheet. If it's on Nation Builder, fine, but you can just have it in an Excel spreadsheet, just something that you can search. And then you find out how are the list of nonpartisan candidates listed in your state. In many states, the county election official has a list for all the races in that county. So you sit down, how many counties do you have in your state? You get the URLs of each county election division or board of elections or whatever it is, county clerk, etc. And then you go to that county page and you find the candidate list for that year, for that cycle, etc. And you sit and you look at the candidate list and you compare it to the list of your registered Greens. And you kind of figure out what is the most efficient way to do that. But I literally am manually, name by name, and California, we have 58 counties with tons of candidates, and it takes me several weeks to do that. And I compare that to our list of registered Greens. So that's a methodology that your states need to identify your geeks. And you might get a student who's willing to do it one cycle, or they might be willing to do it for a couple of counties. Now, the other thing is, not only do you want information geeks, but this is a fantastic tool for people in your state to become more familiar with what are the offices that are up for election in different parts of your state, how many people run for it, et cetera, et cetera. And you might have a team of 2 or 3 people who geographically do their areas in your state. And I am, again, happy to train in people on how to do that work. And then you forward that list of who has run for office and who has been elected. And then there's a series of pieces of information. We basically, and I'll stop here, we basically want to know how many people ran for how many seats, how many votes and percentage of the vote did the Green candidate get, what place did they finish, how long is the term, those kind of basics. Over.
I see 2 people with hands raised, but there were a couple other questions that I just wanted to get to. One, some people have been asking where the database is found, and I was going to put the URL in, but it's still down. If you go to gp.org, www.gp.org, and at the top you have this annoying menu that flashes in and out when you run your cursor over it, but click on elections, and then on the top menu, click on elections database, and it will be up there. So it's not that hard to find. So we have Justin, Beth, and Greg Jokoy, but I also wanted to mention, someone asked, how can someone volunteer to help? Someone also asked, why are candidates leaving office is important to focus on. I'm seeing a lot of support for Cornel West, but not equal support for other candidates. A house needs a foundation too. I think all of us agree with that, but if you wanted to maybe call on the 2 and then also just note how someone could volunteer. And then if you have a comment on if we found out anything about why candidates are leaving office.
Okay, so first, put my email in the chat, mfeinstein@feinstein.org. Anybody who wants to get involved, write me and we'll figure out the right way to integrate you in your state. For the people who have questions, I want to ask them all, and I'll answer them together. And then the point about Greens leaving elected office is we need to revive the Green Office Holder Network that we established in 2003 and 2004, but kind of withered away. And I am going to have a proposal for the steering committee to help with that. The more we integrate the office holders with the party, the less likely they are to leave. So let's go ahead and hear the questions from the people. If you can call on them, Holly, okay. And then maybe we can answer them all together.
Okay, Justin, Beth, and Justin, please, if it's a question, please, a quick question, and then Greg Jokoy, question, whatever. And then I just mentioned the other 2. So go ahead, Justin.
Okay, so first of all, I was involved with this before Lynn Marivelle was in Maine. So I was working with the electoral committee to identify the people here in Maine, Mike, and I know you came to some of our meetings to find out what we were doing and how we were doing it. Some of the information you're asking for is a little difficult. Just saying, we can give you some of that information, but it's going to take additional research that we didn't have time for. But I'm hopeful and that we can actually get people involved, maybe from outside of Maine, that are interested in doing this kind of research to assist us here. But I think some of the ways that this has been framed a little bit is, you're somewhat correct, but I feel like things were kind of handled poorly here in Maine. Just got to say that. Over.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah, just briefly, I just want to acknowledge Justin got it off the ground, and it's Maryville, not Williams, but Justin totally got it off the ground in Maine and really conducted a great process, had a couple of other volunteers, and it would not have started without his leadership on it. And he gets 1,000% credit, because our national numbers, California has shrunk enormously. Pennsylvania has shrunk. A few other states, and the number of office holders has shrunk. And if the process that Justin hadn't got going in Maine hadn't happened, and all the additional people we now know about in Maine weren't counted, our numbers would be terribly anemic. So hats off to him, 100%.
Great. And then Greg Joe Coy, you're next.
Yes. Real quickly. Has any state that does not have registration by party gone to the effort of contacting elected officials, describing what the Green Party is, and asking them if they are a Green? And if they have, how has that worked out? And if no one has that you're aware of, do you think that might be a worthy endeavor?
Well, I think that, that obviously that's a political move where you have to try and figure out who is the most likely to want to join your party and what your membership criteria is. So if it's a non-registration by party state, then presumably you already have a registration list, and therefore the kind of outreach you're talking about is a political choice rather than a factual choice. I will say, however, that a lot of non-registration by party states still don't report their people well. It's tough. I mean, like, I know about some of their office holders, and people in their states didn't know about it. So that goes back to the idea about states having a more consistent reporting of their own people.
Let's see, Nicolananda. Nick.
If I understood the question about that Greg asked, I have been a candidate, and I've gone and contacted elected officials, of almost always Democrats, one a Republican, and to let them know, why don't they consider joining the Greens? Over.
How did that work out?
I don't know who just asked me, Mike. I don't know if that was you that asked. How did that work out?
Somebody asked you, how did it work out?
Yeah, no, I heard that. And no, if it worked out, I would be bragging about it more. Not interested. It's a one-party state, the Democrats and all these progressives, and I don't want to take up time here. All these progressives that I got one person to run as a Green who's running as a Democrat, but they're not an elected official. But no, people want to be Democrats because that's where the power is. We've tried for 30 years, Mike. I know you know that I know.
Right. But see, here's a case where, to the degree that we can have the most accurate and largest count of the number of Greens holding elected office, when we go to somebody and say, hey, you're a local city council member, maybe you should join the Green Party, it is possible to run and win while you're a Green. There's X number of people who are already Greens who are in office. It's an asset that we can use to do the kind of outreach that Greg is talking about. It is an asset that we can use to make us look more credible.
We have, let's see, I would also mention, or for people who are just coming in, because of bandwidth issues from this country and others, if you could put your videos off, turn off your videos. I put mine on so it's easier to see talking, but otherwise, if you would do that, please. or we will, Orlando Johnson, I see you are next.
I was gonna say, Mike, you did a great presentation. It was very informative. I learned a lot in a short period of time. And I think the key to winning is data. And I like how you broke it down, but I also appreciate everyone in the chat that helped me go straight to the website to collect that information. And I'm looking forward to emailing you. Over.
Thank you.
And the elections database is now up and running, thanks to our intrepid web manager, David Doonan. Thank you. He just put that in the chat. So,
David's amazing.
yes. According to my clock, we are done at 3 p.m. We have just a few more minutes, and we could probably go a little bit over, but we do need to leave because there's a ballot access presentation coming up next, another important thing starting at 3.
Actually, Holly, this is Dee. Sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
can we just stay in this room? Do we have to log out and log back in?
I don't see why not. Well, who else is hosting that though? That's the only issue.
Felina, and she's here. We can make her a host.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I don't mind. Just stay.
Okay.
I have one small thing to mention then, in the remaining time here. One of the things that I have done for the folks in Maine, and as soon as my laptop gets repaired here in Vietnam and I get it back, for those of you who are familiar with what is called an anchor link, an anchor link is if you have a web page and then you want to be able to go directly to something that might be halfway down the page, you put this anchor link, it is part of the URL, and then it can, when you click on it, it takes you right down to that part of the page. There are currently 20 some states in which we have Greens holding elected office, and I'm going to publish to the NC list anchor links for all of those states, so that any state party that wants to simply use that anchor link and put it on their own state website in order to list who their office holders are, that can just refer directly to what's in the national party list of us office holders, and thus they'll have something that is up to date and that'll save them some of that work.
Steve Schoen has asked an interesting question. This is being recorded, and I could stop the recording. We can all wait, or people can go into the waiting room and then come back in. But I could pause the recording. I guess perhaps we could stop the recording completely and then start it up again. So we don't have to log out. And then people can, we'll just be silent for a while and maybe go back into the waiting room. But I think that way you'll have 2 different recordings of these sessions and not one big humongous recording. Okay. Felina, no, Felina's just giving a thumbs up. Good. Because Felina knows how this works. Okay, thank you. So, is there anything else? Thank you, Mike, for doing this, for all this work. And I'll just say personally, I've been really in favor of this kind of stuff since I was involved. And I think it's extremely important. And, someday after there's like a meteorite destruction of the earth and aliens come and find us and start researching things, this data may turn out to be of interest. I do think that there are going to be scholars and academicians who will be studying third-party history in the United States, and this is going to be really invaluable. Plus, it's an inspiration for other people, and plus, it's fun to know about. So if you're interested in getting involved, the database is now up and running, and you can contact Mike and others through that. If there's nothing else, what's the advice? Go into the waiting room or just shut down? Maybe the waiting room is best, and we'll re-enter in about 15 minutes.
Well, before
Unless
you do
there's
that-
more discussion or Mike has some more points to make. And Mike, thank you. You are amazing.
Yeah, we have something coming up in just about 15 minutes, so we do need to.
Darlene Stack.
Go ahead.
The only thing that could happen, Holly, is the chat will continue on into the next session. So if you need a fresh chat, we probably want to stop and start again.
Okay. Do you really want to do that, or do you want? Start it.
You have to just start and stop the recording.
Yeah.
Well,
I
that
think
doesn't
so.
make the chat fresh,
but-
refresh.
Well, maybe people can just live with the I'm question. Do you think that's going to be such a horrible thing?
Well, I didn't know